pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, as we begin this meeting, we ask that you guide our thoughts and actions. Help us to accomplish our goals while displaying your character. We pray these things in your mighty name. Amen.
Chairman, Directors, the first item on your workshop agenda, item 1, is a review of fiscal year 2018 financial statement and independent auditor's report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. Mr. Luis Lopez with the Burton McCumber is going to present the findings of the audit for 2018.
Thank you, Pilar. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Luis Lopez. I'm an audit manager with Burton McCumber in Longoria. I'm here with you today to present to you the audit of the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2018. As you know, Ricky Longoria is the partner on the engagement. Unfortunately, we did have two audit presentations at the same time, so we had to divide and conquer. Before I get started, I do want to acknowledge the fact that we are here presenting this audit report on time within the 90 days. And I do want to give credit to the staff for being very cooperative throughout the process, providing information timely and responding to any inquiries we had in a timely manner. You should have, if you open your report, you should have a 3-page letter that is stapled. I'm going to start with this. This is what we call the governance letter. It includes certain matters that we as auditors are required to communicate to you, the governing body. And I won't read through the entire letter. I'll just kind of hit some points on it. We have audited the financial statements of Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority for the year ended December 31st, 2018. Confirming that this audit was conducted under generally accepted auditing standards and general government auditing standards. Government is responsible for the selection of accounting policies. Note 1 to the footnotes to the financial statements includes a summary of the significant accounting policies. The letter speaks to the fact that in these financial statements, as there are in any other financial statements, there are certain estimates included in the balances. In this case, an estimate that was made was on the allowance for uncollectible. In this case, management determined that receivables were 100% collectible, and so no allowance was needed. We encountered no difficulties in dealing with management in performing the audit. As I mentioned before, everyone was very cooperative. There were certain adjustments posted during the audit process. Some of these were a result of the normal reconciliation process and closing and audit procedures as well. I did include on the 3rd page of this stapled packet the adjustments that were posted, and there were only three adjustments. The letter speaks to the fact that there were no disagreements with management during the course of the audit in terms of financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matters. The letter just confirmed that we did receive a management representation letter at the conclusion of our audit. In some cases, management may decide to consult with other accountants to obtain a second opinion. To the best of our knowledge, that did not occur with this engagement. And under other matters, it just speaks to the fact that the report does include required supplementary information, which is the management discussion and analysis, the MD&A. Limited procedures were performed on the MD&A, but we did not audit this section, and therefore we do not render an opinion on this section. If there are no questions on this letter, I'll move on to the report. Just very briefly, if you can turn to page 3, which is the table of contents, I do want to highlight a significant difference between this year's report and last year's report. Last year's report, there was an extra section in the table of contents and a section in the back of the report for the single audit. This year, there was no single audit conducted. The reason for that being that last year you had about $12.4 million in federal and state funds that were expended for the construction of the US 281 project. That project has since been completed. In the current year, there was only about $200,000 that was expended of federal and state funds. So the threshold that would trigger a single audit was not met. So I just wanted to highlight that difference. If you can turn to the 5th page, which is the audit report letter that is on BML letterhead. Again, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2018. Our audit report letter does include management's responsibilities. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on these financial statements based on our audit. And so if you go down to the last paragraph of that page, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. The financial position of Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority as of December 31st, 2018, and the changes in financial position and cash flows thereof for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So this is what you call an unmodified opinion, a clean opinion, basically saying that the financial statements are fairly stated. I will just give a brief overview. This year's financial statements and the activity was fairly straightforward. I know in previous years there have been certain items that are highlighted, such as prior period adjustments or changes in accounting principles. This year, there was none of that. So if you can turn to page 12, this is a statement of net position. And I know it's hard to give context because it only presents current year information, but I will provide some prior year numbers for comparison. Your total assets this year were $135 million. Last year, your total assets were $132 million, so there was an increase there. Total liabilities this year were $85.5 million. Last year, there were $86 million, so there was a small decrease in your liabilities. Overall, your net position increased by about $3.3 million. The bulk of your net position is in the bucket of net investment in capital assets, and that's mainly due to the type of entity and all the costs going into, or many of the costs going into your construction in progress. If you turn to the next page, which is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance, this basically provides a detail of how and why your net position increased by $3.3 million. Operating revenues in the current year were $7.1 million. In the prior year, there were $6.3 million. So you had a pretty significant increase in operating revenues, primarily due to the fact that the trends continue to be upward on the vehicle registration fees. And on the overweight permits, that increased significantly due to the fee increasing from $80 to $200, and so that is reflected here in that balance. So total operating income in the current year was $6.1 million. Last year it was $5.3. Again, primarily due to those increases to those revenue sources. Non-operating revenue includes items such as interest expense, amounts due from other governments, such as TxDOT or and contributions from cities. The non-capitalized construction costs, those are due to those are the final costs to complete the US 281 project. As we mentioned in the prior year audit, because that project is turned over to TxDOT at completion, and it is going to be maintained by TxDOT, it's not an asset of the RMA, therefore those costs are not capitalized. In terms of the financial statements, that's all I have. I do encourage you to read through the notes to the financial statements, as they do provide additional detail. I will just point out that there is one additional note that was not on here in the prior year. And this is the on page 23, item G, which is just the operating lease commitments, and it basically just outlines the lease payments over the per year during the lease term. And this was added just because of the increase in the current year in the lease expense. And finally, if you turn over to the very back of the report, there is another letter that is on BML letterhead. This is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. Basically, the results of our testing identified no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. However, material weaknesses may exist that have not been identified, mainly for the purpose that we don't test every single transaction. We do sampling, and so we didn't identify any of those items. Had we identified any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, there would have been additional pages included within the report outlining what those findings were and management's responses as to how those findings would have been addressed. At this time, I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Any questions on the audit? I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, Directors, the next item on your workshop is item 2, review of fiscal year 2018 annual compliance report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. This is basically a statutory requirement of the authority that we turn in an annual compliance report. In your packet, under workshop item number 2, is a copy of that compliance report that's required under Chapter 26 of the Texas Administrative Code. And then there's 3 columns. On the very left column is the compliance rule that we're required to comply with. The center column is our compliance statement, basically whether we're in compliance with the item or not in compliance, or it's not applicable. And then the third column on the very right is the certification of that item. There's 2 items on your regular agenda where you will be certifying that the audit. You'll be accepting the audit from Burton McCumber Longoria. That's certifying 2 of these items. And then you're required to approve this compliance report by board action before we submit it to TxDOT. And that'll be another item on your regular agenda for approval. And so I'll answer any questions you may have over the compliance report. It's a 1-page report. It's very, very simple format, and we're required to submit it annually.
Any questions on the compliance report? No, sir. Thank you. Let's go and call the meeting to order. We've got a quorum.
Sir. Item 1A, Chairman and Directors, is a report on program manager activity for the 365 Tollway project and the IBTC environmental clearance document. Eric Davila will be giving you a report.
Good evening. With regard to the 365, we continue to prepare for the project for the rescope and rebid. In addition to discussing with TxDOT what our next steps would be. We're also preparing some changes to, or updates to the procurement policies and the way we handle the RFP documents to be in compliance with some additional federal requirements in anticipation for using some federal funding on the redesign of the project. We're also preparing a few utility-related items to bring to the board in the next month or two to, again, align some of the utility work that will need to take place ahead of construction. Once we know, or we kind of have an idea where we're going to land on the rebid set of plans and going out to bid again, we want to be able to time some of those utility companies, since they have some lag time, that if you don't push them early on, they're not going to perform on time when we need them to move. So want to make sure we keep, striking while the iron's hot. And then on the IBTC project, we held the public meeting on March 19th. The turnout was very good. You had nearly 100 people show up between the public, a couple of, I know we had one board member, that Mr. Frank Pardo showed up, and we had the county judge's office present. Most folks stuck around for the public meeting presentation that took place. We had, given the turnout, we had 3 very good questions asked of us. Some of it having to do with schedule, some of it having to explain design, and some landowner concerns which, don't really materialize to a whole lot to answer in this public meeting summary report. We're just going to summarize those questions, essentially attach all the exhibits and get that into TxDOT's hands as soon as we can. Our public comment period ends April 3rd, and so we've already received a good number of inquiries, but again, nothing that wasn't already asked either on the floor when we were having the public meeting or in the open session, so nothing that we hadn't really seen yet. Most questions are about schedule. When are you coming? So that was a good indicator that we've been doing the outreach necessary to not surprise anybody out there. And those are essentially the biggest updates we have on both projects. Any particular questions we could entertain right now? Hearing none?
Any questions? Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman and Directors, the next item is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the governing body and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, if discussion is desired, that item or items will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
Are there any questions about the consent agenda? If not, entertain a motion for approval. Motion Alonso, and second by
Me.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Regular
Item-
agenda?
Item 3A, Resolution 2019-15, approval of fiscal year 2018 financial statement and independent auditors report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. So this is consideration and approval of the financial statement and independent auditors report prepared by Burton, McCumber, and LaGuardia for the fiscal year 2018. The report is required by the Texas Administrative Code, Title 43, Part 1, Chapter 26, Subchapter G, Section 26.65A. Staff recommends approval.
Can I get a motion for the resolution of 2019-15, approval of fiscal year 2018 financial statement independent audit? Have a motion by Paul, second by Rick. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Item 3B, resolution, resolution 2018, approving the annual compliance report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. Again, this compliance report is required under the Texas Administrative Code, Title 43, Part 1, Chapter 26, Subchapter G, that deals with regional mobility reports and audits. This is a compilation of compliance items that the authority is required to report to the Texas Department of Transportation on annually. Staff recommends approval of the compliance report.
Can I get a motion for approval of resolution 2019-16?
So moved.
Have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Approved, same sign. Motion carries.
Item 4, Chairman's Report, annual election of the Vice Chairman and Secretary Treasurer for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority Board of Directors. Chairman and Directors, under the bylaws, you're required to have an election annually to elect a Vice Chairman and a Secretary Treasurer. Or you could opt to elect a Secretary and Treasurer separately. However, under the bylaws, you are allowed to combine them into one office, and historically, the board has opted to do that.
I want to make
election to Pharr's run vice chair.
A motion for Forrest Reynolds to be vice chair.
Second.
A motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Forrest. The nomination for secretary treasurer, can I get a nomination? It's not getting too exciting here.
Why everybody looking at me?
I'll nominate Rick Pettis,
I have a nomination for Rick Bettis.
Secretary Treasurer, how's that? Rick?
Sounds like a winner to me.
All right.
Motion and second. Any nominations? Nomination cease. All those in favor say aye. Rick say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Chairman, recommend that you enter into executive session for item 6A under section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code.
Motion to adjourn into executive session. Motion by Rick, second by Zeke. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
To sign?
Thank you, Reeves.